G'day, hi, and welcome. All right, so I've got an interesting topic for you today. So what I've got here is two really incredible guitars, and just so you know, right away, there's going to be no sound samples. This is just a discussion. So what it is for somebody who's like looking, maybe not so much to upgrade their sound, but to change the direction of the sounds that they're going in. Um Not so much the tone, but the actual modern guitar versus like the 1960s guitar. Most guitars on the market are still like, for example, this guitar is a phenomenal guitar. That's a phenomenal guitar. But most guitars are, and amps are aimed towards that 1960s classic rock sound, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. um, you can get some really awesome sounds that way. But if you want to sound more modern, you can't do it on the older guitars setups that you can like on the newer guitar setups. And the thing I found, okay, for example, this guitar is now, I've had it since 2006, so 18 years. And for a good stretch, this was like the only guitar I owned. Well, maybe not for a long stretch, but for a little while. It was about a year or two that I had this guitar where this was the only electric guitar I owned. I had the acoustic, but it was just this and the acoustic. I only had two guitars, down from God knows how many guitars I had at the before I bought this. And what I've learned is when you buy a really good guitar, like again, I still make a bold claim that this is the best guitar I've ever played. And yes, I've played a lot of guitars. I've played lots of Les Pauls. I've played lots of Ibanez's, lots of Jacksons. Now I'm getting into the PRS stuff past couple of years. You name it, I've tried it. ESPs, you name it. And I will boldly say this is the best guitar I've ever played action wise. So you'd say, well, if the guitar is so good, why would you upgrade from it? Well, the problem of the scale length of the 24 and 3/4 scale length, it's like Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top said. Why they asked him why he liked the short Gibson scale, and it was simple. Why would I want to work harder? That's 26.5 inch scale length. You got to work a little bit harder on that. So the thing is that when you have a guitar like this, okay, and it plays really, really well, if it plays so well, why would you want anything else? Because even though it plays amazing, like I say, it's the best playing guitar I've ever had. The way I've got it set up, and I've had other people try this guitar and they just go, "Whoa!" Like this thing is incredible, the way it plays. But it doesn't do modern sounds. Like that short scale gives you really lively guitar solos for sure, and gives you really angry sounding, chunky, chunky rhythms. Like you can get classic metal sounds that you can get, definitely classic rock, and you can get the blues and you can get all that. So this guitar kind of does everything, right? But it doesn't do modern. By modern, I mean think like symphonic metal, uh, prog metal, deathcore stuff like that. I don't necessarily want to go into the deathcore stuff, but I do kind of want that extended range sound, and that's why I've got this guitar here, which this guitar basically does everything that this guitar doesn't, and vice versa. Like for example, if I want to play classic rock, um, jam and AC/DC stuff, yeah, you can do it on both guitars, right? But this guitar just does it much better. Playing straight through the amp, this is the better guitar. Playing compressed with lots of effects, that's the better guitar. With extreme high gain, that's the better guitar. Sound-wise, both guitars are mahogany bodies, mahogany neck, maple neck, ebony fingerboard, rosewood fingerboard. Rosewood fingerboards really give you that out front 1960s sound. And when I say 1960s sound, I'm not talking The Who. I'm talking, basically stuff from the 90s. They think of all the metal from the 90s. A lot of it was played on Les Pauls, stuff like that. So that is still the 60s sound. So when you're looking for a guitar and you can't quite find that modern sound, it's probably because you're using a 1960s setup, and just like a Strat or anything from Gibson, anything from Fender, like they haven't really reinvented the wheel. right? PRS is a little bit of a different category here because it's strangely enough, they are starting to understand that most guys that are going to play guitar, okay, are either going to be into country or metal, or blues. Like that's kind of where they're going to go. Now, what scene is bigger, the metal scene or the blues scene or the country scene? I don't know. It's hard to say. But if you look at the average young lad, they're playing with a lot of distortion. You know what I mean? So they're not going for that 1960 sound. They're going for the extended range sound. They're going for drop tunings. You get limitations. Like this, you could go to drop C, no problem. Double drop A on an SG. I've done it, but you can't intonate it. So it's just like the strings just flub there. It sounds kind of cool, but you can't intonate it. You just don't have the adjustment. So this is where a modern guitar, you can see all the adjustment I got here. But that thing in standard tuning is like this thing in drop C. So even though they're both tuned to the same. But I wanted to grab a guitar that was completely different just to show you. So, some of the differences you're going to get. And some of those differences typically from like single pole pickups, which are very dynamic sounding, sound fantastic when going straight through the amp, versus four-poled pickups, which all pickups are technically four-poled, but when they wire them into one pole, you get a really dynamic, sounds great, clean, you get a lot of great overtones, you get all that stuff, but they get a little bit muddy when you put a lot of gain on them or whatever. Where these things stay clear, they don't have as much dynamic, but they stay really clear, so you can pull a lot of effects, tons and tons of gain. I'm doing it for time here. Yeah, okay, I still got a little bit of time left. So for me in 2019, I was looking to get more modern sounding, and I just couldn't get that out of this guitar. That's when I knew I had to get something completely different. Now, in the mix, most people will probably not hear the difference between either guitar in the mix at the beginning, but after, say, listening to these two guitars in playing the same song through the same rig at the same settings, after a while you're just going to start hearing that baritone sound, and you can't unhear it once you hear it. A lot of times I'll listen, it's just like once your ear gets kind of dialed in, you'll listen to something, you can tell if the guitar is either down tuned or baritone. A down-tuned baritone's even heavier, right? Like it just shakes the walls. So that's why I went that direction with the 7-string and stuff like that, is that's not the 1960s sound. This is the future, right? And then who knows what will, at some point somebody will say, I don't want that 2000s sound anymore, or the 2010s sound anymore. They want something newer, and we'll see what guitars have to offer in the future. I mean, right now it's a golden age for guitar players. If you can think of it, like it's out there at a price range that most people can afford. So that's a pro guitar. That's pro guitar. Some people say, oh, Gibsons are overpriced. Well, when I bought this new, it was $1,560. That one was $1,410, and then plus tax on both of them. So this was a little bit more expensive, but you do get a little bit more guitar in a sense that, at the time it had a different rotary switch on it, which gave you 5 sounds, where that gives you about 6 sounds. So they're comparable that way. I've again played this live. I haven't played that one live yet. I can't wait to hear that thing cranking through a big PA. Mic up the amp or whatever, and just it's going to be, people are going to say, I've never heard that guitar sound before, live, unless they're metalheads, right? So that's going to be really, really, really cool. So something to consider is your scale length. Your scale length will change things. That, like that classic guitar sound is 25.5 scale and 24 3/4 like the Gibson, so Fender and Gibson, and everything kind of modern is baritone scale, like 26.5 and up kind of stuff. So just something to consider. I guess I'll leave it at about that before the video splices, because again, I know some of you guys like the part 1s, part 2s, but some people don't. So it's just, I thought it was an interesting topic that I should bring up. So when you're looking for a new guitar, rather than buying the same guitar over and over again, like a different version of an SG isn't going to give me really that much of a different sound. A baritone, look at the scale lengths, and then you can kind of everything else like the pickups and that kind of, help too. So modern sounding pickups versus vintage sounding pickups. These are classic 57s and a 57 plus alpha and omega pickups. Again, when I record with these guitars, I can hear the differences between them in the mix using the same settings. So that's what I was after. So anyway, there we go. Tell me what you guys think.